Hey, what's going on, ReFi Nation? I'm super stoked to drop one of the first office hours that we've hosted alongside our friends at Common Stack. These are some of the most experienced community builders in the space. We're talking with Griff, Tamara, and Livia about the open source toolkit that they've pioneered as they launched the Token Engineering Common and as they've looked to build regenerative microeconomies to create communities that take care of the commons and are rooted in a culture of abundance. Hope you like this one. There's a short talk from Griff at the beginning, and then we open up into a broader conversation about building regenerative communities and culture in Web3. Thanks for your time, and let us know what you think. I am super honored to be able to introduce Griff and Tamara from Common Stack, two of my favorite people in the space who have had the pleasure of meeting in person in Paris this summer, and give them a chance to introduce the work that they do at Common Stack and just hang out and talk about community building, talk about regenerative microeconomies, talk about the amazing open source tools that they've pioneered, and just help each other along our journey. So all lightly kind of co-hosts, but really it's up to just everyone to just ask questions and pick the two gigabrains here today from Tamara and Griff. I don't know if either of you had anything that you wanted to start off with, Griff or Tamara, but happy to hand it over to you guys and we can take it from here.
Yeah, and Livia just joined too. So
hey, Livia.
Yeah, she just snuck in. I have a little presentation, but maybe I'll let Tam and Livia introduce themselves first, and then I want to go into also like the bigger picture, like what are we doing in ReFi a little bit too.
That sounds awesome. Kick it off, Tamara.
Sure. Hi, I'm Tamara, and I've been in crypto for a few years, something like six and a half now, maybe 7. I'm losing count, which is crazy, but only really in the DAO space for the last 2 years since I met Griff and Livia and Jeff and all the Jessica and the people at Common Stack. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to build in this space. And when I first learned about crypto, I understood immediately that it was going to change everything about the way we interact with each other and coordination and cooperation and society. And that's what that's what I came in for. And it just took me a few years to find the right people to do what we're doing now, which I think is just super important for how humans can coordinate in the future and reprioritize value for things like ecology and culture and more human things. And I'll pass to Livia.
Thanks, Tam. Hi, everybody. I'm Livia. I work with the cultural build side and the Common Stack. So understanding how to create the culture of these new economies and what we need to be regenerative, how to abandon some of the behaviors that we bring from capitalism, from extractivist systems that we don't want to reproduce anymore, and how to create, regenerative collectives, have healthier relationships and more resilient organizations. And I come from a acting performance background, so I think bringing some of those practices and ways of looking at culture from this collective perspective. And I'll pass to you, Griff.
Yeah, and so I kind of manage more of the tech side of things for the Common Stack, and really bring the big picture point of view, which I really want to share the Common Stack's view on ReFi with you guys, just as an overview. But I'm going to go super fast. I'll share the slides if you guys are interested, because probably a lot of this is repeat, especially if you've ever heard any of my talks before. So we'll zoom through the overview and get straight to the meat. Why do we need regenerative finance? Because we have a gaping hole in our economic systems. We're really good at producing private goods and club goods, excludable goods, and we really suck at non-excludable goods. These are considered common pool resources and public goods. So I like to kind of throw the left side that we're really good at. I call it scarcity economics. When there's scarcity, we're really good at distributing it. We have really great market practices. right? And so scarcity economics is set. There's business models and there's win-win organizations. The invisible hand moves everything along. But in abundance economics, which is what I consider the right side of things, where ReFi likes to play, we suck at it. We just suck. Like, you know, the governments and nonprofits are the type of organizations that are distributing non-excludable goods. And I don't think anyone's like, oh, these guys are killing it. You know, it's sad but true. So, and this is because abundance economics doesn't have the win-win on it. It relies on taxes and donations. It relies on sacrifice, and ReFi doesn't. This is where things get really exciting. So yeah, there's lots of problems with scarcity economics, and abundance economics solves them. And if we are going to just continue to rely on governments and nonprofits, we are so screwed, long story short, right? And that's why we're here. This is why we're here, because we're going to build something different than donations and taxes. We're building a third way, a win-win way to provide abundance to society without requiring sacrifice. And this is, I like to call them regen economies. This is the ReFi way. I mean, it's the ReFi way I want to focus on. There's also these donation games that are really fun to play, and you can watch my DevCon talks if you want to see the difference between donation games and economic games. But I really like the economic games that we're playing and building with ReFi. But the problem is that the economic games that work in the ReFi space really well are all very focused on the digital side of things. Prime Coin, Cure Coin, you know, anything that you can have like digital accountability, you can create a blockchain or a token around and manage really effectively. But bridging it to meet space is where things get really tough. And this is what the Common Stack is really excited to focus on and hopefully help everyone in this area do as well. So yeah, we think that it's relatively easy to start a regen economy if you have a whole bunch of people supporting you financially. Think of like Gitcoin or Optimism, these orgs that have like big VCs backing them, then they can launch a large economy. But I want to see a world, and Common Stack is building for a world where people can start up their own microeconomies and solve a lot of the problems that they don't need big VCs. Let's have a startup mentality, you know, where we can launch little projects and see how they go. And we did our first one that we launched is the Token Engineering Commons. And I would say it's been a smashing success. We learned a lot. There are, of course, lots of things that we learned and things that could have gone better. But honestly, you look at the token prices as a metric, it's still above the price that people bought it at, which in this market is a goddamn miracle. So we're really proud of the engineering commons and what we launched there. And this is basically what we've built. So the key piece that makes it able to do microeconomies is the augmented bonding curve. So this solves for price discovery and liquidity issues in low liquid markets. We can talk more about bonding curves and stuff if you guys, I think we're going to do a breakout session or something so we can go. You definitely want to hang out with me if you want to learn about bonding curves. Another really important piece of the system is starting with a trusted seed. So we actually started our own project around this idea of a trusted seed called the Trusted Seed, but it's really about not starting with a bunch of VCs that just want to extract value, but finding aligned supporters and only allowing them at the opportune moments, right? People who believe in the future of your protocol. And that, I think, has been a huge part of the TUC's success. And also integrating culture into it. You know, we're in the ReFi space. We're trying to make the world a better place. So how do we, like Livia said, avoid repeating the same capitalist extractive patterns that tend to happen in these economic systems? We need to start with a strong culture and learn from each other as we launch these things. And so Common Stack has developed playbooks that are constantly evolving to kind of integrate these tools with the culture, and also the other way around, where we integrate the culture into the tools. So we have praise, which I saw that you guys have praise in your you don't have the praise bot, but you have a praise channel, which is pretty cool to see. The meme is spreading. So yeah, we created this praise reward system, which is kind of like a source cred or coordinate, or one of these distributed reward system. But basically, anyone can dish praise to anyone else, creates a culture of gratitude, and also creates a way of distributing reputation and rewards across the community in a decentralized way. Just super cool. And we also integrated a novel form of voting called conviction voting. I think one thing that I've learned with conviction voting is that it works best when there's a lot of proposals. So maybe starting out, you wouldn't want to start with conviction voting, but if you have a system that's going to need a lot of proposals, this is a really cool way to do signal aggregation instead of voting. And so, these are just a few of the things that we're working on in the Common Stack, and we want to help you guys. We want to help the refi space as a whole really figure out how to launch these things. One thing that is really interesting is the idea of a ReFi Commons, and we've been talking with John about this and seeing if that's interesting to coordinate lots of moving parts all into one shared goal with a common pool to govern. So that's one interesting approach for the Common Stack with this community. But also, if anyone just needs support, we're happy to support you guys in launching your own regen economies and give advice. So definitely contact us, and maybe I'll pass it up to John to figure out what the next step is after that overview.
Thanks, Griff. Oh man, I love that. I was really, amazed at how you condensed so much of your guys' work into a short stack. I dug a lot deeper into some of those dynamics during the Common Stack prize process, and looks like we've got a good number of folks. My intuition was suggesting that we could actually break into 3 breakout rooms, one with Tamara, one with Griff, and one with Livia, and that allows for smaller conversation, exploration. But I just want to kind of get a gut check from people in the room. Do you guys want to stay as a bigger group, or would it be helpful to kind of dive deeper into some of these topics in a smaller setting? Just feel free to unmute and voice your personal opinion and thoughts, and we can kind of steer according to how folks are feeling. Max votes breakouts. Anyone else feel one way or another?
I guess it depends on what subjects it is that we want to sort of dive into. And if we find 3 separate subjects to dive into, then it makes sense. But otherwise, I think it's interesting for all of us to hear all the questions and share responses, but I can go either way.
Yeah, well, maybe we start here in a kind of group setting, and if we find that there's a bit of energy and enthusiasm in a couple different directions, we can navigate that way. Cool. Well, the floor is open to anybody here who's joined and wants to ask a question. In the space in which Common Stack is working in, around building community and culture, creating value line token holders. There's a big space there. So I'll just be quiet, and anyone feel free to just unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, so my question goes into the direction of, so I think what we're trying with ReFi DAO is really this like mutual peer-to-peer empowerment and kind of up-leveling everyone into a like leaderful position rather than down-leveling into like a flat hierarchy which has no leaders and no capacity. And I wonder how Common Stack is thinking about this as a key, maybe, because I kind of see it as like the key that we need for the next kind of phase. How are you seeing this? How are you building into it? How are you also working within Common Stack with this idea? Yeah, so very open question. Yeah.
Livia or Tam want to add anything, and they can. I think that's super cool. We don't necessarily we've never experimented with peer-to-peer like leadership groups like that. We do really believe in like bottom-up leadership. And the way that we do that is more through our collaborative economics approach, where we allow anyone to design the economy, and then we have kind of a distillation process where anyone can propose a mission, vision, value statement for the community, or like the economic parameters, but then everyone else gets to see, and they can kind of fork off of each other. Right. So this iterative collaborative building process that allows really anyone to be the leader and have an engagement opportunity and play with the dashboard, and also understand the whole system that we're building. But I'm really interested to hear more about what you guys have learned from the peer-to-peer stuff as well. Like we don't have a set rule set of how things need to be. We have cultural, we really are students of Eleanor Ostrom, and we have cultural expectations or principles that we want to follow, and integrating things like this is like so cool.
Can you share the link to the dashboard? I found that particular aspect of your guys' hatch process particularly illuminating. I heard you say it as you were describing it, but like I'm such a visual person, and maybe other people are, that could be useful just to see like what you mean. Yeah, there we go. So this kind of elucidates what Griff was talking about allowing anybody in the community to basically set the economic parameters of the kind of leadership, I guess, and the token design. Oh, cool, you're sharing. Go for it.
Yeah, you can hear me. Yeah, I just want to warn you that we haven't used this, we're not actively using this website, so I'm already noticing that it's like the visual representation is a little off, probably some updates somewhere that we just haven't been watching. But yeah, we basically make it really easy. So the Commons Stack likes to launch Commons. This is like our core product. So we want to see if we can launch these micro regen economies around the space. And so we're trying to build it to make it repeatable and also bottom up. And unfortunately, these systems are a little complex. Bonding curves, conviction voting systems, how do you govern your DAO? What kind of, normally these things are in most DAOs, there's just like some core group of people making these decisions behind the scenes, and we don't really think about it. And so it's really, who says that it has to be 50% for a vote to pass? That's a parameter someone had to choose. It can be 60%, 80%. And you think, oh, well, there's a snapshot, so now the community is involved. It's like, yes, that's true, but really these economic parameters are so critical for how the economy evolves and how people's voice are heard. So you need the people. We thought we needed dashboards to enable people to actually have a voice in how decisions are made. So we have these like, this is the bonding curve. You can choose various parameters. This is maybe a more simple one where it's like, you really get to choose like how much support is required. Like how many yes votes does it take to pass a proposal? Or another way of thinking is how many no votes does it take? And we add these little question marks. Like how many no votes does it take to veto a proposal? Might be a better way of saying it. And quorum, how long does the voting period last? All of these things, and like delegation. There's and then we have our conviction voting system, which is also very interesting, and about how funding proposals can pass when there's a lot of funding proposals competing against each other. So yeah, the dashboard is really fun, and it's a really engaging way for everyone in the community to learn about the real underpinning of how the economic system works, and then also have a chance to say how it should work.
Totally. And I think the interesting thing, go for it, Livia.
No, I just wanted to add also to Maximilian's question of empowering people to have leadership. So we work with this idea of how can we prepare the environment for people to have agency. And I think education is a big piece of that. So the dashboard comes in this front of educating the community for them not only to vote on a proposal, but for them to be able to make a proposal. So this instance of creating something that you think could be beneficial and feeling like you have the space to do that, and not that you're just going to be opinionating on someone's creation of a decision. So building that environment where if people have the impulse, the motivation to do that they have space to do so. But if they don't, they can also participate in other ways. And then that's the form where the leadership starts to be formed in the community.
I want to add to that too, to say it's non-intuitive actually to assume that you know enough to be able to submit parameters for an economy. And what we saw in the TEC while the community was making decisions was people were very resistant to even myself, many of the stewards were just like, I can't make a proposal. I don't know. And so what the community did was created these debates and hosted, an hour where people would like review a proposal and debate the parameters and then learn about them and like get a real like conversation going around it until people felt comfortable submitting one. And then they're like, oh, it's all wrong, I'm going to submit another one. Oh, that one's all wrong too, I'm going to submit another one. And after a few weeks, you really actually felt like, wow, this proposal that I made is amazing. And then you sort of go to bat for it. I want to just add one other thing more about the question that you asked, Maximilian. I think that, one of the things that is part of the culture is this idea of stewarding, right? And what does it mean to be a steward? And we really learned a lot actually from the TEC. There's actually 4 stewards from the TEC here. There's Shebnam, Griff, myself, and Livia. So that's very cool. But also, there's this idea, like what Livia mentioned about agency was really important, and how can you make sure that people who are stewarding a community have enough agency. One of the tenets of these stewards was servant leadership, and actually lifting other people up and allowing other people to have agency, and then just getting out of their way. It wasn't command and control, top down. It wasn't telling people what they do. It was an environment where people would say what they wanted to do. And then we would have this 2-week scrum, this sprint, and people would say what they wanted to do. And at the end of 2 weeks, either they did it or they didn't do it. But it was very transparent and open. And it was very much allowing people to take on things that they wanted to take on. And I think that what we did learn was we're missing somehow accountability. And it ended up, I would say, is like, that's one of our big learnings, is that we have to figure out how to put this accountability factor into this sort of permissionless work environment. And that's where I think we could learn a lot from sort of, other peer-to-peer techniques.
And can you explain more about the accountability? Like, what were you guys seeing? Because what we're following through.
Well, so from my perspective, so I was the steward of the stewards working group. So I feel like I have some good perspective here, but so does everyone actually. We had many stewards working, managing different working groups. And in a traditional organization, that steward would have sort of a manager and a support team to help them when they're struggling, and would slowly take steps to managing other people and budgets. And it seems as if, many of the stewards hadn't yet had that experience in their lives. And also, I think, didn't have enough support to help them get over that learning curve to manage contributors and to figure out budgets and this stuff. So I think that's one of the components where I would see future stewarding organizations have more direct, like some kind of experience levels, right? Like if you have, 1 year experience, or if you've never managed a team and you have 20 years experience, there's so much learnings that come into that. And I do some sort of like buddy mentorship to make sure that the stewards who need some help getting to the next level have that help that they need. And I'd love to, I don't know if Griff,
yeah, it would be interesting to hear also from Max, like the peer-to-peer, how that matters, or what is your vision there, for example, because stewardship, depending on your experience and your management style, or what you have been taught, or what you experience coming from corporate or so, could have been very hierarchical, right, or very top-down. So it would be interesting to hear, like, what is the value, and how are you going to realize it when you say peer-to-peer? That could be interesting, Max.
Yeah, I think there's like so it really kind of depends on like the starting point or the parameters we use for like building things, let's say, where we could kind of assume everyone's at a particular level and we want to just optimally coordinate them so that they can, at their current level, be most effective to build the things and etc. And I think there's an opportunity in peer-to-peer and also, let's say, a little bit like of self-unfoldment or self-development in the context of leadership, where you also want to, like, first of all, coordinate the current status of the people, but then also slowly up-level everyone into higher capacity of the capacity that they have. And so there's this there's a way of building systems to do the first thing. And then typically the second part is missed. So what happens when accountability breaks down, commitment breaks down? At that point, it doesn't need a better coordination or like a rigid structure. It needs this cool, how do we now up-level people into that capacity to then re-engage and to confront the things that are in front of their own lens where they're disabled to be committing to the project or whatever the thing is that they're trying to do. Does that make sense? And I could kind of speak more, but I see that as a thing that we as a whole space the world actually kind of needs to work on.
So that's quite interesting, because in PACT we had, coming from Ostrom's principles, we had this one principle of accountability and graduated sanctions, right? And we didn't really get into how to implement that. But for example, for me, coming really from automate all those things, engineering mindset, all of that was new, but then also it was kind of not really vibing. And that. And that's something new, I guess, and I'm curious, what is it that you all know that we could be sharing about how can you actually help people be open about what they can, their skill level. Sometimes also, you have to be helped to see, right, your strengths, or where you're maybe not effective yet, or maybe where you're personally struggling, etc. This whole coaching perspective, where I saw Daryl and Max you super strong, and how can we actually make that part of this leveling up, instead of not just games where you fail and game over, or where you're punished in one form or another, but actually where this groups are helping each other to become better versions of themselves.
I'm just going to kind of pause and open the space maybe for more questions, because this could go on a massive long tangent.
Totally.
And I do want to.
But I think there's a really interesting thread there. Rudy just asked a question. Do you want to ask it vocally, Rudy? Or do you want to go with text? It's up to you.
Yeah, no, I can ask that. I heard a couple of times in as y'all were describing this that you're talking about a community, and you also mentioning the stewards. And I'm curious how that community kind of came together around Common Stack, because I think there's some interesting work that I've been doing with this group called PACT DAO, and they're a Web3 meets mutual aid organization. And we're kind of trying to figure out a little, I guess, something similar, just how do you get, these kinds of this kind of operating system would be so effective for decentralized organizing. And I know of a group that I'm a part of that is pretty decentralized. It's 200 volunteers, and every 2 weeks we come together. We manage a $200,000 annual budget, all collectively 200 volunteers, and every 2 weeks we're there's a whole run of show of trucking diapers, clothing, pounds of essential goods and food, and getting it out to folks. And we come across things where it's oh, inflation, the price went up for eggs. We used to pay $1,000, now it's $3,000. And it's we have to you have to get 200 people who don't really know each other to decide, do we still buy the eggs? Do we buy it from somewhere else? Right. So there is this kind of there's a need for this decentralized organization, and probably some better tools, because we're basically all in one Signal chat trying to vote on add emojis, whether we should do X, Y, Z or not. And that gets lost in the 100 other texts. So basically I see communities where they would agree with these ideas of having microeconomies, the principles behind them, abundance economics. They're all bought into that, and even bought into organizing. But it feels like a very it feels rare to find folks who are into all that and willing to try out new technology to make that process more seamless and frictionless. So I was curious how you guys brought such a community together and brought the stewards in as well.
Yeah, I think something that can be relevant for your case is that work for us was fragmenting the work streams that needed to happen. So that's how we created the working groups, and that was a huge opportunity for engagement. So at first, the community started in a partnership of Common Stack with the token engineering community, and there was folks from the token engineering community and projects that came together for us to iterate our mission, vision, and values. So this was the first collective step of like, okay, we're going in this similar direction, and then deciding a basic decision-making space. Like, what tools are we using? We could do this in a pretty simple way. We started with emoji votes, like you're saying, and we did a few basic decisions on that track. But then when we wanted to expand and bring more focus to different streams that needed to happen, we will open the working groups so people could come and collaborate on the manifesto of that working group. So whoever is interested, like, how can you contribute to this? What is the availability you have? What does this working group wants to achieve? When is done? What does success look like? What does failure look like? And then answering these questions with the people that are available on those streams. So maybe not everybody needs to decide about the eggs. Maybe there are people who have more expertise on how the egg market is shifting or how people are going to use the eggs, and then they can come and make those decisions and so on. So I think structuring groups is helpful for that. And then decisions can happen within those groups. And if you have larger decisions that will impact the whole community, then having like a clear framework for that, how to decide when something is really impactful, and then how people vote on that.
I think the iterative part of what you mentioned, I think, stands out a lot. But I guess were these folks, the folks who are in the groups that you're referring to, were they like a part of like folks' networks? Did you find them like all online?
We found them online. They kind of emerged as leaders with the community. You know, it was just like, you know, these work streams, people would be like, oh, there's a lot of work here. Let's just start a work stream. And someone would initiate the creation of a work stream. Like Shebnem created Omega as a work stream. And then we have ethics getting stewarded under the TC. So it was definitely emergent, I would say. We didn't we didn't do recruiting or anything.
And who actually started it?
Also, because token engineering community was already there, right? Like, or maybe similar to ReFi DAO situation where this regenerative project and talks are already underway. If you want to have this around or in that community, I think that's a different start than, for example, many projects in the founders circle currently. They're like, okay, what's the go-to-market, or how do I really start a community where I have this dApp, or I have this little piece of solution or little piece of get to know each other. Completely different than from how Common Stack and Token Engineering Commons started. And I think that's quite interesting difference to see.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Super cool project, Rudy. I love the in-person connection and the real world goods and those hard decisions of how do you trade off with a limited budget when these are, very core and raw human needs that are time sensitive and difficult to trade off. So I'm sympathetic to the complexity of that. Feels very different than kind of launching a new token. It's like a different stratosphere, but interesting to use these tools to pull us together. Any other thoughts from folks building community, creating economic alignment? Feel free.
Yeah, I just posted a really long question because I couldn't verbalize it in time, but something more around thinking of how to create value for commons that are either producing real products or assets that will yield some kind of value in the future. And we're comparing different models, whether it's augmented bonding curves. We're now looking at more of like a non-transferable token that's earned over time, that's backed by some portion of the treasury, so that with some kind of buyback from the treasury, it is like burning or transferring, but it avoids having, I guess, the volatility. Sorry, I'm a bit sick. The volatility of like having it as a publicly traded token. So just wondering if there's other primitives that we could potentially look at for things that create assets. And specifically, we're looking at things like supply chain assets or co-owned energy grids, to kind of share value with the community that contributes.
I mean, I can jump in if no one else wants to, but I think we could all kind of dive into this. We looked at a few things. We're specifically excited about engaging the community and trying to create upside in public goods, which is why for us a volatile token is valuable and useful. But if there's an existing framework and it's clear revenue streams, I mean, you know, creating a normal business is also not like the end of the world. I like what you can do with non-transferable tokens and sharing revenue. I think that's a really cool idea. And we have a fun way of distributing reputation. I'd call those reputation tokens in a way. And then you're kind of like rewarding contributions or of labor and expertise with like a share of the revenue, which I think is super cool. And then, but then can people buy the non-transferable tokens too? So you can get capital injections as well. And because I feel like, you know, all of these systems are going to just revolve around how do you reward capital, labor, and expertise inputs, and just managing that into a way that creates a positive sum game or more output than in, or is, you know, solving somebody's problem somewhere. I think it's super cool, this idea of actually sharing revenue via non-transferable tokens that are burned. But I don't have anything else to add.
Can you open that a little bit more? I don't understand the mechanics of how that works. Like I like the idea of revenue sharing is something we've kind of been looking at. Like we donated 10% of our GR15 proceeds to all the founders and founder circles that had active grants, and but like the kind of dynamic revenue sharing. Can you extrapolate a little more?
Yeah, I assume you mean me. I think the way that we're doing it is we're basically creating a DAO to hold some kind of physical asset. So we start off with kind of the supply chains that are a little bit easier, and we basically make it so that anyone that contributes either a piece of material or a design or produces a piece of clothing or technology, they basically accrue this non-transferable token, as Griff mentioned, and earn it either as reputation or just value. And then based on the ownership of that utility token, they're able to either burn or stake to receive some kind of future royalty. And as soon as it becomes staked, it is basically a security token that has a dividend. But we are also exploring basically the trade-offs of bringing extra liquidity, bringing in investors, and using something like an augmented bonding curve. But kind of worried that that brings a little bit of volatility, even if it comes with upside for our contributors. So we're just toying around with different models, and even maybe putting in 10% of those non-transferable tokens in to a pool that then can be liquidated kind of publicly. But yeah, I think in general, in terms of royalty sharing, it's more of a legal hurdle right now that's facing most of the DAOs to avoid it being securities. And in the Netherlands and some of the few other jurisdictions, they have foundation style things that can still preserve that royalty or revenue sharing without it being considered something that's a security, as long as it's non-transferable. So it's just kind of like going around the legal loopholes and seeing how do you create more value for contributors without necessarily the downside of something that is based on public opinion if there's bad news about what's happening, just generally.
I would check out the system you describe is very similar to how SourceCred managed their cred and grain. I don't know if you saw that, have seen that, but it's very similar. So maybe if you haven't checked it out yet, it might be worth checking.
Maybe it's a good segue to talk about praise and how that works, and how recognizing contributions is currently set up in Common Stack and for the Commons that you guys help set up. I don't know who the best person is to run with that. Livia, you want to go with that?
Yeah, I can take it. Yeah, praise. Praise is a tool to acknowledge subjective contributions and transform and create an objective value to them. So anything that is very hard to grasp, I mean, it's a spectrum from things that are very tangible to things that are very untangible. So the value of someone creating some lines of code, for example, could be considered a little more tangible. And then the value of someone being very kind to newcomers in the community is something very untangible. Like, how can you measure the impact of different contributions? So the idea is that praise captures all of that. So captures all the value that everyone sees in the community. And then there is a process for community members to look at each one of those entries and give a tangible value to them. So we have a Fibonacci sequence of numbers that you can measure from, like, maybe something was a value 1, and then one contribution is a value 140. So the one that was a value 140 is 140 times more impactful than the thing that was value 1. And through that, intuitively, you start to get your hang out of, like, quantifying this subjective entries of praise. And then what happens after that is the average of those quantifications for each praise entry are summed up for every person, and they receive a score. And then that score can be rewarded either through a reputation token or a financial token. Like in the Common Stack, we use Trust, which is a reputation token, and the TEC, we use TEC, which is a financial and governance token.
Yeah, so it's super cool because the experience in Discord is just anyone just types in \praise this person, that person, and they're just kind of like showing gratitude, and it like builds this culture of gratitude in the community. And then every 2 weeks, anyone who wants to can actually quantify praise and get rewarded for quantifying the praise. And then they get a really good overview of what's happening in the community, who's doing what, and then they actually get to score it. And at the end, you distribute reputation while building this, like there's just so many positive sum games happening inside of the praise system where people get to hear about what everyone is doing and get onboarded to the community better. And it's a bottom-up distributed way to give reputation or rewards to the community. So it's a really fun system that we're working with General Magic to evolve and launch into a full-fledged product.
Yeah, and just one last thing to add, to tying back to the accountability aspect. I feel like praise works quite well as an accountability mechanism, that people see what everyone is doing. So it's a very transparent way of getting decentralized updates on the community. And we also have an analysis tool now that is embedded in the praise, which you can see what were the relationships between people who praised who, what were the top praises, so what were the contributions that were most valued in that period, what were the biggest contradictions between quantifiers. So there's a whole range of cultural insights that can be analyzed after that and shared with the community. So there is this feedback loop of like, oh, this is how value is being stewarded, acknowledged, and quantified.
I think because it hasn't been said, and I think it's also really important too, in DAOs, there's so much work that happens, and many times we're very permissionless, right? Like we have these very thin boundaries or cell structures, and people can come in and out and do work. And it's way to surface hidden work. You know, a lot of care work is hidden, right? You know, somebody makes space for you just to be sad, or just to, you know, to changes your mood, changes your day just by listening to you for a little while. These are kinds of things that never get rewarded and never get compensated, but they change the dynamics of a community and the intimacy of a team that's working together. So just being able to, you know, praise somebody for giving you that, you know, making you your emotional, like helping you emotionally through a tough time. And also being able to, like, being in a community that's using praise. You know, thank you is like, how many times do you say thank you? Hey, thanks for doing this for me. Thanks for doing that for me. Thanks for, come on, like, you know, what if my thanks can actually give you tokens and reputation, or even monetary tokens? You know, it's like, instead of just saying, hey, I really appreciate it, thanks, it's like, praise John for inviting us to this Zoom call so that we can share Common Stack with all the cool people in the ReFi DAO founder circle. And that, you know, that'll turn into TEC tokens for him. And it's just like it's a way to concretely give real appreciation that has something more to it, another dimension to it. It also feels nice to get. When you get praised, it really makes you feel like you're valued in your community. And then lastly, you know how some people like doom scroll through things like Twitter right now? If you go to the praise channel and you just like joy scroll, you can just like feel, you just feel so good seeing all the praise that people in the community are giving to other people in the community. And it's just like, yeah, I'm so excited to be here. You know, it brings a really strong dimension of energy, like energetic dimension to the community.
Awesome. Go for it, Eamon. Jump in, sir.
Yeah, just, I think we mentioned this, I think beyond just the positive sum aspect in terms of community building, is this also linked to reputation that might have some kind of value, or part of like the voting conviction system where having enough reputation gives you more? Or is it purely just being able to see who is adding value in the community?
I would say that, can you guys hear me okay? Things are freezing on my side. Yeah? Okay. I would say that on some, we kind of break things apart into pieces. So the praise piece is really about this like Discord bot that you praise, and then the quantification, like cultural pattern, right? And then you end up with the distribution mechanism. So that distribution mechanism, there's a lot of opportunity for creativity. If you want to level up people's NFT badges, you could probably do that. Like, oh, here's your reputation score. You get some kind of, maybe there's some non-transferable token, but then you build on top of that and say, oh yeah, if you have to have this many non-transferable tokens to get this badge level 3, you know, or maybe you want to do a mix where you're distributing multiple tokens. You're distributing some money, but you're also distributing a reputation token. It's really up for the community to build on top of and work with us to support you in that, you know. I think all of these tools really need to be customized for each group to be especially useful.
Totally.
Yeah, love that.
And maybe it's just like a top level, because I'm curious, can you walk us through the sort of process of becoming a commons? I was understanding there's kind of, different parts, different stages, and also for people who might be interested in like what kind of resourcing would folks be looking at if they actually wanted to hire you guys to build out commons?
I was going to see if Tam wanted to take this one. I feel like I'm talking too much.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So we have different, we have like, it's a complicated process, right? Because there's like many different moving pieces, and we've tried to create these different modules and different phases to sort of make it easier for any community to choose the module that they want in each phase. And, you know, you can build a full commons, or create like just pull pieces of a commons out, like the augmented bonding curve or praise. And we're looking at something like, based on what we've done with the TEC, we're projecting it's something like 6 to 9 months, probably closer for 9 months, for a community to really follow the 4 phases of a commons deployment. The first is like initializing the commons. So it's having the community come together and decide what their objectives are. Start to bring in some stakeholders, start to have some cadence and some rhythm with meetings, deploying the praise system so that you can start to identify the people that are contributing to the economy and to the community. And then have a moment to have the mission, vision, and values, begin this collaborative economics process where you are, as a community, using the tools to suggest and iterate and fork on other people's suggestions, and then to come together and build your mission, vision, and values for the commons. The next step is really the capital formation, which is the hatch phase. And this is where you raise funds for your mission. And there's a few key things here. Most importantly, Griff mentioned the trusted seed earlier, and the Commons Stack did come up with a membership organization of trusted seed members who are, trusted, value-aligned Web3 and Commons people. And we would imagine future commons would like to invite the trusted seed to participate into the launching of their commons because they have the expertise and they already have capital that they want to apply to these kinds of future commons. But more importantly, every community themselves should have their own trusted seed. So they're the experts in their own mission and the people that they know want to fund this mission already. And so it's these people that come together and then participate in this fundraise together and select the parameters for how the fundraise will work, how much funds they expect to raise, how much of that will be allocated to people who've already put in some sweat labor into the mission already. And then there's this period where the hatch rate, and I don't know if I'm going into too much detail. I do have a slide that'll probably make it a lot easier, but I can't bring it up right now. And then people will go in, then once the funds are raised, the next step is for anyone who's participated in the fundraise, who are now holding tokens for the amount that they've contributed to this community and to this mission, to then design the augmented bonding curve. And the reason it's so important is to have people you trust setting the parameters for the economy is you want this community really to be focused on the mission. So long-term, achieving the goal, achieving the mission, not short-term individual profit. Like long-term, we're in this together. We're gonna, have a vesting period that's sufficiently long for this economy and for this mission to get off its feet. We're not looking at 10xing in 2 months and everyone exiting and leaving people who are new into the economy holding the bags. So you have people who are really invested in the long term of the mission. And then once that is done, and then the economy is launched, and then the community will continue to operate, like go from building mode to operational mode in order to achieve the goals that they've stated in their mission, vision, and values. There's got to be questions. No? Okay.
Yeah, I think the interesting part is like the hatch itself seems to be something that not many other projects are really going to in earnest. And I'm just curious to think of like, what happens when you don't do that process and you bring a bunch of money, just say raise a classic VC fund? Like, what are you guys seeing really the core reason is for going through this process? And yeah, just curious about the trade-offs.
I mean, the nice thing about the hatch is that it's effectively outside of the normal legal jurisdictions, and we have a program set where it's like a way to do a closed group where you're not looking for VCs, but you're giving upside to actual supporters, to real people that you trust to be part of it. And so then you can do this closed raise effectively. And then with that, you're starting a DAO who has the choice to, DAOify or not, and go to the next level. So, it's basically like starting, a lot of groups do this. They do it basically with Moloch DAOs that rage quit, where you can rage quit. And that's effectively what our hatch is. It's different because it's an Aragon DAO. We're using slightly different tech, but I think it's really similar in that way of like, you're effectively gathering people who care, who are putting money in the pot. the big difference that we're adding is this, like, the people with reputation also get shares for free. So it's
Nice.
it's similar to a company who's just like distributing shares to initial investors, you could say, right? Doing like a seed round. But this is what we're really trying to do, is take the VC route, but try to apply it to what is traditionally nonprofit causes. So like, how can we model this, what has worked with VCs and but maybe there's not a really good, clear business model with revenue. And I think that's the big difference, is that when you're actually trying to provide value to society, you don't have a great revenue model for the VC route to work. But if you're still providing value, so we can build an economic model. And this is a way to kind of start that economic model from a small scale and then grow it beyond that. You know, like, we start with a bonding curve, but if your economy grows to the point where you can have liquidity in Uniswap, and you want to turn off the bonding curve, and you want to outgrow that bonding curve and just become a free floating token.
Yeah, it's such an important transition, and the fact that you are building these systems for those microeconomies before they get to that stage, to navigate that carefully with actors that really share their values, I think is essential. Well, I recognize we're coming to the end of our time here. I wanted to give a massive thanks to you, Griff, and Tamara, and Livia. It's wonderful sharing this room with you. Hopefully this is the first of many conversations. I'm personally super stoked to explore what a ReFi Commons could look like. And yeah, for all the community builders out here, you guys know where to find these folks on Twitter. We'll publish this probably later next week for those who couldn't make it. And yeah, thanks again, y'all, and really appreciate your time.
Thanks for hosting, John.
Yeah,
Right.
Thanks so much, John. Thanks, everyone.
Peace be with you, everyone.
do
See you guys
reach
next
out.
week.
Thanks, y'all.
I love what everyone here is doing. I've been looking at the Notion page to try to catch up on all of the founders in the founder circle. It's really cool stuff.
It's so sweet. Yeah, there's some amazing people here.
Yeah, it's
been
really
great
cool.
to hear from a subset. Awesome, y'all. Peace be with you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye.